Before we get to the story, I'd like to say thanks so much for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading cosmic horror related stories every single day. So if that sounds good, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot, especially when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I've done 47 EVAs over the course of my career. Spacewalks, we used to call them back when I was training, though there's no walking involved. You float, you drift, you pull yourself along handholds while the universe spreads out around you in every direction. It's the most profound solitude a human being can experience, tethered to a station, surrounded by nothing but vacuum and starlight, utterly alone in a way that people on Earth can never truly understand. My name is Dara Vance. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a mission specialist aboard the research station Threshold, which orbits Europa at a distance of about 400 miles. We're a staging point for the unmanned probes that explore Jupiter's moons, maintaining equipment, analyzing data, keeping the mission running while Earth is too far away to help with anything urgent. This is my third tour on Threshold. I know the station like I know my own body. Every module, every hatch, every handhold on the exterior hull. I've spent more hours outside than most astronauts spend in space at all, and I've never felt anything but comfortable out there. Until the day my suit detected a second heat signature in open space. It was supposed to be a routine EVA, sensor array inspection, component swap, photograph any micrometeorite damage, standard procedure, the kind of work I could do in my sleep. I suited up in the airlock, ran through my checklist, and cycled outside into the void. Europa hung beneath me, its ice-covered surface glowing pale in the reflected light of Jupiter. The planet itself dominated the sky, bands of brown and orange and white swirling in patterns that never repeated. I'd seen this view dozens of times, but it still took my breath away. I made my way along the station's hull to the sensor array, my tether trailing behind me, my movements slow and deliberate. Commander Ben Harlow was monitoring from inside, his voice crackling in my helmet every few minutes to check my status. I was halfway through replacing a malfunctioning module when my suit's proximity alert pinged. The sound was familiar. I'd heard it plenty of times when working near other crew members or when debris passed close to the station. But there was no debris in our tracking system, and no other crew members were outside. I checked my display. The alert showed a heat signature, roughly human-sized, approximately 12 meters away, bearing 045. I looked in that direction and saw nothing, just the station hull, the stars, the endless black. Ben, I'm getting a proximity alert, I reported. Heat signature, 12 meters out. You tracking anything? A pause. Negative, Dara. Station sensors show clear space around you. I ran diagnostics on my suit's detection systems. Everything came back nominal. The equipment was working correctly. The heat signature was still there, and according to my display, it was now at 10.2 meters. It was getting closer. I activated my helmet lights and swept the area, looking for anything that might explain what my sensors were detecting. A piece of debris with residual heat, a reflection of the station hull. Anything, nothing, just empty space. The signature continued to approach. 8.6 meters, 7.4 meters, 6.1 meters. Ben, something's wrong. The signature is closing on my position. I'm not seeing anything on my end, Dara. Are you sure it's not a sensor malfunction? Diagnostics are clean. Whatever this is, it's real. I started moving towards the airlock, disconnecting from my work tether and pulling myself along the handholds. The signature matched my movement, maintaining its approach angle, getting closer with every second. 5.1 meters, 3.8 meters, 2.4 meters. I was moving as fast as I safely could, but the signature was faster. Or maybe it wasn't really moving at all. Maybe it was just getting closer in some way I couldn't understand. At 1.3 meters, I felt something. Not a physical impact, not pressure against my suit, more like a change in temperature, a subtle shift in the thermal regulation. My suit's heating system adjusted, compensating for something it detected, but I couldn't see. I looked down at my torso, at my arms, at my legs. Nothing was there, but my suit's thermal readout showed heat being drawn from the outer layer, pulled away by something invisible. I reached the airlock and cycled inside, the outer door closing behind me. I checked my sensors immediately, hoping the signature had stayed outside. It hadn't. It was still there, still at 1.3 meters, still attached. It had come inside with me. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, our medical officer, examined me in the equipment bay while I was still suited. She used handheld thermal cameras, electromagnetic sensors, everything we had available. The results were troubling. There was definitely a heat signature on my suit that had no visible source. It covered roughly the torso area, slightly warmer than the surrounding material, about 0.3 degrees Celsius above baseline. "It's like something's sitting on you," Yuki said, her voice carefully neutral. "But there's nothing there." I removed my suit and we watched the signature transfer, first to my flight suit, then when I changed clothes, to my skin. Whatever it wasn't attached to the equipment. It was attached to me. We spent the next 2 days studying the phenomenon. The heat signature remained stable, moving when I moved, shifting when I shifted. It didn't spread or grow, just maintained its presence on my torso like something had settled there and decided to stay. Every test came back inconclusive. Spectrographic analysis found nothing. Electromagnetic scanning detected no anomalies. The signature existed only as heat, no mass, no radiation, no physical presence our instruments could identify. Ben ordered a search through mission archives for similar incidents. What we found made everything worse. There had been other cases, scattered reports going back decades from different missions, different stations, different regions of space, astronauts detecting unexplained heat signatures during EVAs. Most were dismissed as sensor malfunctions or thermal artifacts, but several of those astronauts had experienced symptoms afterward: gradual temperature irregularities, fatigue and distraction, a tendency to seek cold environments, and 3 of them, all on different missions, years apart, had gone on subsequent EVAs and never returned. Their suits were recovered, still sealed, systems intact, but the astronauts inside were gone. Not dead, gone. The suits were empty, no bodies, no remains, no explanation. Yuki developed a theory based on the available data. "What if there are things living in the vacuum?" she asked during a briefing with the senior crew. "Not biological organisms, something else. entities that exist at temperatures close to absolute zero, composed of something we can't detect with normal instruments. Living in space, Ben said, just floating around out there. They'd be drawn to heat, like deep-sea creatures around thermal vents. The vacuum is their native environment, cold, empty, stable for billions of years. But when they encounter something warm, they attach. Attach how? I'm not sure. Maybe they exist partially outside normal space. What we detect as a heat signature could be the overlap, the point where they intersect with our reality. Yuki pulled up her analysis. They feed on heat, draw thermal energy from their host. The process is slow, weeks, maybe months. But eventually what? Yuki didn't answer directly. She brought up the reports of the missing astronauts. They weren't killed, she said. They were converted, pulled out of normal space, transformed into something that exists at near absolute zero temperatures. They became void dwellers themselves. The room was silent. Every warm body that enters space is a beacon, Yuki continued, calling to things that have been drifting in the void for eons. The symptoms started 3 days after my EVA. I was cold constantly, even in the well-heated station. I wore extra layers, ran space heaters in my quarters, wrapped myself in thermal blankets. Nothing helped. The cold came from inside me now, radiating outward from wherever the signature had attached. I slept poorly. When I did sleep, I dreamed of floating in darkness, of being slowly pulled apart molecule by molecule, of drifting through an emptiness so vast it had no beginning or end. And I felt something else, a pull. Not physical, not emotional, something deeper than either. A compulsion that grew stronger every day. I found myself drawn to the airlocks, to the observation windows, to any view of the void outside. I didn't want to die. I need to be clear about that. But something in me wanted to go outside, something that wasn't quite me anymore. The crew isolated me in my quarters. They monitored my vitals remotely, watched my temperature drop degree by degree despite every intervention they attempted. 95 degrees, then 94, then 93. My fingers went numb, my lips turned blue, my thoughts grew sluggish and strange. And still the signature fed, drawing more heat, pulling harder at whatever was left of my warmth. In desperation, I tried to communicate with whatever was attached to me. I spoke aloud in my quarters, asking questions, making requests, pleading. I wrote messages on paper and held them against my chest where the signature registered. I tried meditation, visualization, every form of contact I could imagine. There was no response, not in words, not in any form I could interpret. But I began to sense something. Impressions, not thoughts. A vast patience, a cold that had no end, a darkness that stretched forever in every direction. The void dwellers weren't intelligent, not in any way I could recognize. They weren't malevolent or curious or anything that mapped to human emotion. They simply existed, drifting through the vacuum, feeding on heat wherever they found it. They were old, older than Earth, older than the sun, maybe older than the stars themselves. They'd always been there, in the spaces between things, waiting for warmth to come to them. And I was warm, or I had been before they started feeding. Ben came to my quarters alone on the 8th day. He sat across from me, looking tired and sad, and told me something He'd never told anyone. On my second tour, he said, I detected a heat signature during an EVA, same as you. Proximity alert, nothing visible, impossible readings. What happened? I ignored it, completed the EVA, came back inside, never mentioned it to anyone. He paused, his eyes distant. 3 months later, the crewmate who'd done the EVA after me, she disappeared from a sealed suit. You think you passed it on? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe it was already on the station, waiting for someone to go outside. He rubbed his face. This station has had more EVA anomalies than any other. 3 astronauts have disappeared from here over the years. The program doesn't talk about it. They can't. Admitting that space itself is hostile in ways we can't counter would end everything. So they just keep sending people out. What's the alternative? Stop exploring? Abandon everything we've built? Ben shook his head. They classify the incidents, warn crews to report anomalies, hope for the best. And when hoping doesn't work, he didn't have an answer. My temperature dropped below 91 degrees on the 11th day. The medical team did everything they could. Heating pads, IV warmers, thermal blankets, drugs designed to boost metabolic heat production. Nothing stopped the drain. The entity attached to me was feeding faster now, pulling more heat, accelerating toward whatever endpoint it was working toward. And the pull toward the void became overwhelming. I found myself at the airlock 3 times in a single night, my hand on the cycling controls, with no memory of walking there. The crew locked me in my quarters, but I kept trying the door, kept looking for ways to get outside. I need to go out, I told Yuki when she came to check on me. It's calling me. I need to be in the cold. You need to stay warm, she said. We're going to figure this out. But we both knew she was lying. There was nothing to figure out. The process was already too far along. Yuki explained what would happen at the end. The void dwellers didn't just feed, they converted. When they drained enough heat, when their host was cold enough, the transition began. The host doesn't die, she said. They change. They become like the feeders themselves. That's why the suits were empty. The astronauts didn't disappear. They transformed into something that doesn't exist in normal space anymore. Into void dwellers. Yes, it's not death, exactly. It's more like metamorphosis. I thought about that for a long time. Metamorphosis, transformation, becoming something else. I'd always wondered what happened after death. I'd never expected to find out by becoming a creature that fed on heat in the vacuum of space. On the 14th day, Ben offered me a choice. They could sedate me, restrain me, try to prevent the transition through force, lock me in a heated chamber and hope that keeping me warm would stop the process. But no one knew if that would work. It might just prolong the inevitable, extending my suffering while the entity continued to feed. Or I could make the choice myself. Go outside, complete the process, see what was on the other side. I thought about it for hours. I thought about my life, my career, the things I'd accomplished. I thought about my family back on Earth, my friends on the station, everyone I'd ever known or loved. I thought about consciousness, about existence, about what it meant to be human. If I transformed, would I still be myself? Would I be aware? Would I remember who I was? Or would I just become another drifting thing in the void, feeding on warmth, empty of everything that had made me human. I couldn't know. There was no way to know. But I decided I'd rather choose than be forced. I'd rather face whatever was coming with my eyes open than fight against it until it took me anyway. I asked Ben to let me go outside. He argued. He begged. He tried to convince me to keep fighting. But I was so tired, so cold, and the pull was so strong. I want to see it, I said. I want to know what I'm becoming. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes full of grief. Then he nodded. I suited up one last time. My movements were slow and clumsy, my fingers too numb to work the seals properly. The crew helped me, their faces drawn with emotion they couldn't hide. I cycled through the airlock and stepped outside. The void embraced me. The moment I was in the vacuum, the cold stopped feeling cold. It felt right, natural, like I was finally in the environment I was meant for. I looked down at myself and saw something I couldn't see before, a shape barely visible, clinging to my suit, or maybe emerging from it, translucent, shifting, made of something that wasn't quite matter and wasn't quite energy. It wasn't threatening, it wasn't hungry, not anymore. It was just there, part of me now. I released my tether and drifted away from the station. I could feel myself changing. My perception shifted, my sense of temperature inverted. The cold became warmth. The darkness became light. The vacuum became home. I looked back at the station and saw it differently. It was a bright spot in the darkness, radiating heat, beautiful and terrible. I understood the hunger now. I felt it myself, a pull toward that warmth, a desire to draw closer, to feed. But I didn't act on it. Not yet. I was still too new, too confused, too caught between what I had been and what I was becoming. I drifted further from the station, further from everything I'd known. And I saw them. Thousands of them, millions, drifting through the void around me, invisible to human instruments, but perfectly clear to whatever I was becoming. They weren't monsters. They weren't evil. They were just what lived here, what had always lived here, in the spaces between stars. Some of them had been human once. I could sense it. Echoes of what they'd been, traces of the warm lives they'd left behind. Now they were something else, something patient, something cold, and so was I. I don't know how long I drifted before I stopped thinking in human terms. Time works differently when you're not bound to a body, not dependent on the heartbeats and breaths and the rhythms of warm life. Hours might have passed, years, centuries. I watched the station from a distance I couldn't measure. I felt the heat radiating from it, the warmth of the humans inside, the pull of their living bodies. I didn't feel malice toward them. I didn't feel anything that mapped to human emotion anymore. I just felt patience and hunger, and the endless cold. The mission continued. More EVAs were performed. More astronauts went outside, trailing heat like candles in the darkness. Some of them detected anomalies. Some of them reported heat signatures that shouldn't have been there. Most of those reports were dismissed, and occasionally someone didn't come back. Their suits were recovered, sealed, and intact. The astronauts inside were gone. Not dead, changed. They joined us in the void, drifting through the darkness, feeding on warmth, forgetting what it meant to be alive. I'm still here. I will always be here. The void is my home now, the cold my native state. I drift among the others, watching the warm things that venture into our domain, feeling the pull of their heat. Sometimes I remember what I was, the name I had, the life I lived, the people I loved. But those memories grow fainter with each passing moment. What remains is simpler: hunger, patience, cold. Space was never empty. It was never safe. It was always full of us, waiting in the darkness between stars, feeding on whatever warmth dared to enter our domain. And now, when an astronaut suits up for an EVA, when they step outside into the void, when their proximity sensors ping with a heat signature that shouldn't be there, I am one of the things they're detecting. I am the cold that draws closer. I am the hunger that never ends. I am what waits in the darkness. And I am patient. We all are. We have nothing but time.